You're watching Mugen TV RPG Haven. Experience a fantasy like no other.
Hey guys, it's Mugen Lord here, and I'm back again with some more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded anything Final Fantasy VII related here on the Mugen Lord channel. So, why has that been the case? Why I haven't been talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake? Well, that's because during the time I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake last year, I was on my second playthrough, and this was pretty much, I guess you could say, a month. Or I guess you could say during the week of the announcement of the Intergrade DLC, and I kind of had a feeling that we were going to get a PS5 remastered or a PS5 edition of Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I just didn't know when it was going to happen. So during the time I was doing my second playthrough of the game, we finally got an announcement of the DLC, and after I finished my second playthrough, the Intergrade DLC was coming right around the corner, and I said to myself that I just got finished playing the game the second time, and I really don't want to go through it a third time. I don't even want to touch the DLC right after I just did a full playthrough the second time around. I just wasn't ready to go back into Final Fantasy VII Remake for a third time. So I said to myself that once the game come out, I'm not going to tackle it right away. I'm going to wait. And I knew that there was going to be some setbacks, or there was going to be some repercussions behind that, for the fact is that now I won't be able to cover any of the Final Fantasy VII content without risking or running into any spoilers, since I just didn't want to hop right into Intergrade right away. So what ended up happening was I just stayed away from Final Fantasy VII Remake content altogether. I haven't checked out any theories. I haven't looked at any other content creators who focus on Final Fantasy or just Square Enix RPGs in general. I just stayed away from everything Final Fantasy VII Remake related, because I have not touched the Intergrade, and I knew that there was going to be spoilers, there's going to be footages, there's going to be thumbnails, so I just wasn't ready to dive into that. So just about last week, I decided, you know what, because I'm starting to see more thumbnails starting to appear, because we're going to start getting news of Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. So I said, you know what, it's about time for me to start diving into Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. So I end up buying it for the PS5, because currently my father, he has my PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake. So while he's playing through that, I was like, you know what, it's $30, so I just paid $30 for the PS5 version, and of course it includes the DLC and stuff. So I decided, hey, I'll just do that, and I'll just dive right into it, and then we'll get right back into creating more content. So yes, I've played Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, and if you guys had checked out my channel for the past couple of days, I've been live streaming, and I was live streaming the Intergrade DLC, and I officially finished the DLC. I believe it was Saturday, a couple days ago, and I figured that, hey, I'll give you my overall thoughts and what I think about the experience of Intergrade, and I also want to give you my thoughts on that ending to that DLC, because oh my god, that ending, we'll get right into it. Just bear with me. So if you guys want to hear my thoughts and my opinion related to Final Fantasy VII Remake content, definitely hit that subscribe button, hit that like button on this video if you like the video. So we're gonna dive right into it. So first, I guess I'll give you my overall experience and what I think about the DLC. In my opinion, I wasn't really expecting too much with the DLC, because all this DLC was just pretty much to hold over, you know, the fans until Part 2 comes out, and also just to give you a little bit more context and information of what Square Enix is doing with this new setup that they have going on with Final Fantasy VII Remake, and to give you just a bit more details of the character Yuffie, because that's right, this DLC focused on Yuffie, the Wutai Shinobi, I guess you could say the Materia extraordinaire. So this one pretty much centers around her. Now, going into this, I didn't know what to just think of this, because in the original Final Fantasy VII, you hear nothing, you know nothing of Yuffie. Yuffie is in fact the optional character in the original. So for them to go this route to pretty much integrate her into the main story, since now she won't be an optional character, so they figured that, hey, let's just do a chapter to show what's going on during the time and the event of when Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett had been pretty much, I guess you could say, sabotaged or set up and framed for the explosion of one of the reactors. And after they got separated from Cloud, everybody assumed that something, Cloud may be dead, and no one knows where Cloud is at. So this is during the time of that part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake storyline. So you're seeing what Yuffie's doing, and you're pretty much trying to, I guess, infiltrate Midgard, and Yuffie wants this secret materia, or some top secret or rare materia that they believe that Midgard is pretty much hiding or in their main facility. So that's what you're pretty much doing as Yuffie. You're infiltrating, you're trying to get this materia because she just loves the materia, and they want to show their dominance that Wutai has, and they want to show Midgard that, hey, we're not stepping down, we're not backing down, we're still a force to reckon with. So that's pretty much the story with that. And then she meets up with other Wutai operatives that's working within Midgard itself. So eventually you'll meet this other character named how do you pronounce it, Sonon or Sun? Yeah, Sonon. I think that's how you pronounce his name, because it's not standing in front of me right now. You meet up with him. He's an additional character new to the Final Fantasy VII storyline, new to the lore and everything. So how does this character, I guess you could say, integrate in the story? How does he work into the story? Now, us OG fans know that this guy is a new character. We've never heard of this guy at all. So since we haven't heard of this guy and he was nowhere in the original game, we know that something has to tragically happen to this character to justify a reason him not being in the original Final Fantasy VII game on the PS1. So how does this character work within combat? Because we're going to address the combat. The combat is really not that much different than what we've already been introduced to in the base Final Fantasy VII Remake, but this time around, since Sonon is a new character and that's newly introduced to the game, you can't really control the character. Instead, the character acts on its own. You just give him commands, and then they have this special mechanic where Yuffie and Sonon has pretty much synergized together. So which means you connect certain actions together, and he follows up with those actions, and then after that you can pretty much activate special attacks based on the synergy that the two characters have. So that's pretty much your way of controlling the character without controlling the character, which I think is a pretty unique mechanic overall. And this could possibly be a hint to some other mechanics that may come in the future to Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm thinking about Cait Sith, maybe Cait Sith, where you have the cat and you have the big Moogle. Maybe you have some synergy attacks with those two. Maybe they may be implementing that into the gameplay mechanics, but I thought this was a unique gameplay mechanic. As far as the overall difficulty of the game, of the combat, the enemies are kind of rough. I believe you start at level 25. The enemies are kind of rough starting because Yuffie is not as strong. So plus it's just you by yourself before Sonon joins your party. So you have to play a little bit strategically. She has these ninjutsu abilities where if you assess the enemies, once you find out their weakness, you can use your ninjutsu ability that centers around the different elements. You have ice ninjutsu, fire, wind, and then you have lightning. So depending on the weakness of the enemy, you can switch over to your ninjutsu and you throw her boomerang. Once you throw her boomerang, the boomerang stays out and continuously attack the enemies. While that's happening, you can just press the attack button to pretty much cast a ninjutsu on the enemy as long as the boomerang is out. If you press the triangle button once again, the boomerang comes back. So there's a lot of neat mechanics surrounding the character. Now, I found it kind of fun playing as Yuffie and then using the synergy with Sonon. So just to get past that, as far as the combat is concerned, it's pretty solid. It's as much as I expect from Final Fantasy Remake so far. Now, let's address another thing that they have introduced in this that's pretty much had a lot of people within the community kind of baffled about, and that's pretty much the Fort Condor sequence. They decided to make Fort Condor into a board game this time around. Now, a lot of people are confused whether or not if Fort Condor is just going to be completely removed from Final Fantasy VII Remake's story altogether, because if you guys don't know, in the OG Final Fantasy, Fort Condor played an important role in the story, especially once you get into like the second disc and you start getting into the big materia story arc that they had going on, and you had to pretty much play the Fort Condor sequence in order to protect Fort Condor, in order to get the Phoenix summoning materia and the big materia, so the fact is that they decided to make it into a board game and they pretty much weaved it into the lore. People are speculating that maybe that may not be an important plot point in the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake. But that's remained to be seen. That could possibly still remain in Final Fantasy VII Remake's story. We just have to wait and see. But as far as the game itself is concerned, I found the game quite challenging, and I really enjoyed it because, believe it or not, it may sound silly. Some people found the Fort Condor minigame kind of like a gimmick or whatever in the original, but I enjoyed it. In fact, I used to have a save file just saved for that part of the game because I love playing that real-time strategy game back in the day on the original Final Fantasy VII Remake. So with this game, it's pretty much more up-to-date, more streamlined, more understandable. What you have your own units. You can swap units in and out. You can look at what your enemy have, and then you can set up your units based on what your enemy have. And like I said, it's a rock paper scissors mechanics. You know, you have the you pretty much have the attack class can beat the range class. The range class can beat the defense, like the shield class, and the shield class can pretty much beat the attack class. So they all represented with the symbols: the shield, the sword, and then the bow and arrow. So that's how the paper rock system works with that. Now what happens is once you place your units down onto the field, your goal is to pretty much, you see the perimeter. The blue line is the perimeter where your characters and your units can be placed. So as your characters travel, it pushes the perimeter even farther. So the farther you push the perimeter, you're able to place more units. Now the goal is to defeat your enemy stronghold. If you destroy one of them, by the time run out and you still have all your strongholds, you win the game. If you destroy all of them, you win the game. And if either side haven't destroyed any of the strongholds, then you're down to a sudden death, and then it boils down to who destroys one of the strongholds first and to win the game. And then of course what they've done, you can pretty much travel and rank up, and you can battle other players within Midgard, and as you rank up, you'll be able to play other players of higher ranks. So you start to run into some familiar characters that's in Midgard, and then you run into Raj himself. He's also playing the game, and he's also looking for Cloud. He's asking you questions, have you seen his friend and everything, which is quite interesting. So it's going to let you know that Raj is going to pretty much be here to stay for good. So we'll definitely be seeing more of him again. And now since Yuffie has an interaction with Raj himself, she's going to memorize this guy once she joins up with the party and meets up with Raj once again. And not only that, they also reintroduce one of the Shinra corporate heads that you met on the train in the base game. He's also there too. You run into him, and you get to what he wants to do is he wants to learn how to teach his daughter how to play the game, and also, you know, find a way to be able to play the game where she doesn't recognize that he's letting his daughter win. So I think that's pretty cool. So it fleshes out some other, you know, extra characters using the mechanic. Now the thing is, I haven't officially beaten everybody with the Fort Condor, because you're supposed to get a special materia, I believe, if you complete the challenge and beat the Grandmaster and everything. And I haven't really sat down to do that, so I may go back and just you know, do that for fun. I'm not sure yet. And then of course you meet Chadley again. Chadley introduces you to the Ramuh Summoning Materia, where you get a chance to battle Ramuh himself. Now that you got that materia, I wonder, because now this is getting me curious, why give me that materia if, you know, when the second game comes, will they have some materia transfer mechanics to transfer all your data from the first game to the second game? I just don't understand why they would, you know, with this DLC they give us another summon, and just for it to, I guess you could say, just be ignored or not to have it going into the second game. So I'm not too sure about that. But yes, I beat Ramuh, and I have him as a summon as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Now, not to go too deep in everything, there's some other aspects of this DLC in terms of story that pretty much has me, I wouldn't say scratching my head, but I know a lot of people who pretty much haven't yet to play it and really want to know what's going on. And I forgot to mention this, I'm sorry. I know I forgot to mention it. Spoiler warnings, I forgot to say it at the beginning. But yes, now, the other aspect which is interesting is Underground. Now, if you guys don't know what Underground is, Underground was another, I guess you could say, experiment of Soldier. I'm not really too familiar because they're from the Durard Cerberus, which I haven't really played too much because I wasn't really a big fan of Durard Cerberus game back during the PS2. But these guys are now integrated. I'm saying that keyword again. they have now been integrated into the main story of Final Fantasy VII Remake now. So it looks like that Chally has some connection with Wise or Weiss, however you pronounce his name. And then you have the other character named Nero. Now it seems like they're experimenting on them, running some tests on them, and what happens is when you as Yuffie and Sonon, you guys have infiltrate the Shimmer building. You run into Scarlet because Scarlet is in charge of the weaponry the department, and also the experiments with materia and everything. And that's exactly where Yuffie is trying to go in order to find some good, rare hitting materia. And then come to find out that Scarlet also plays a big role in Sonon's backstory because of her weaponry. It also have involved in the death of Sonon's sister. And I think her name is Melfi, if I can remember, because this is all fresh in my head. Just got finished playing it, and she pretty much dies. And I guess you could say, in a way, Yuffie kinds of reminds Sonon of his sister Melfi. And Melfi, and Yuffie herself, she kinds of don't want to be seen as his sister or whatever, because I guess because of her death, it made it seem like she's incapable. And Yuffie has this chip on her shoulder. She really resents her father, and plus she pretends to be a know-it-all, because as you see in the story, there's a lot of things that she really don't know of Midgard or just the world in general. But other characters kind of pick up on that, but she kind of like ignores that, or kind of like pretend, hey, I know what you're talking about. Like, yeah, I know more than you guys. So that's like a little, I guess you could say, self-defense type of mechanism that she has, and a weakness that she has within herself and everything. So when he mentions that, Sonon mentions that to Yuffie feels some type of way about that, and she don't want to be anything related to his sister, because I guess you could say his sister is a sign of weakness to her. So she kind of just don't want to be associated with that connection to her. So Sonon and her runs into Scarlet, and Scarlet pretty much runs you through all these combat tests. These are like pretty much like boss trials, if you want to put it that way. Yeah, so you go through all these trials and everything. You finally beat Scarlet, and then they call in the Underground. And then as you fight the Underground, you run into Nero. Nero, to me, was like the easiest boss. Destroyed Nero. The regular enemies, when I was trying to get used to the game, I had more trouble with the regular enemies than I did Nero himself. It was a pretty interesting combat, but pretty much destroyed them. After all that was said and done, Sonon pretty much sacrifices himself to make sure Yuffie makes it out. Now, me as an OG fan, I kind of figured that something tragic was going to happen to Sonon, for the simple fact was he's not in the original Final Fantasy VII game. So that means if we're introducing this new character, there has to be something tragic, or there has to be a reason why this character doesn't show up in the original game. So I kind of like wasn't surprised. Nero pretty much hit him with a fatal strike, and he sacrifices himself, and it upsets Yuffie because it pretty much puts her back in that helpless category, or she's kind of like compared to his sister Melfi once again. I believe that's her name. And it was sad. It was sad. But if we know anything about Square Enix, and especially with the Kingdom Hearts franchise, if you don't see the character dead, officially dead, then the character is not dead. Now, it looks like that we may not be seeing the last of Sonon. I don't think it's going to be the end of him. I think we will be seeing him much later. But to what extent, don't know. He gets pulled into the darkness. Oh my god, it sounds like Kingdom Hearts. He gets pulled into the darkness, and I believe he may end up becoming a underground experiment. That's what I believe. So I believe there's going to be a major, I guess you say, side story or a story arc to Yuffie's character in Final Fantasy VII Remake once she bumps into Cloud and the rest of the party. And I really believe that Underground's going to play a big role moving forward, and I believe that Sonon is going to have some connection to that. And of course, Scarlet is going to have more backstory to play around with that, because now Yuffie will have a grudge against Scarlet even more. So we'll be seeing more of that character, and I don't think it's going to be the end of Sonon. So right after that, it goes straight into the end sequence where she sees the destruction the lower plate in Sector 7 gets destroyed and everything, and she gets upset, and then that's when at the end she rides the Chocobo, and now she's talking about looking for recruits to join her and everything, kind of like when you meet her in Final Fantasy VII, the original Final Fantasy VII. She's always trying to appear to be strong, powerful, capable, and everything, and she tries to convince you to join her instead and everything. So I think that's where that kind of aspect comes into place. So that was pretty much the DLC, and it was really short. You can beat it around 2 hours, maybe shorter than that. You can probably beat it faster than that. That was just me running around leveling up and stuff like that. But 2 hours is how long it took me to beat the DLC, and as far as I'm concerned, that's really not even worth $20 just for the DLC by itself. 2 hours of just gameplay and everything. Now let's address the elephant in the room. And I know we already like 20 minutes into this video, and I know this is probably what you guys have been waiting for. I know I gave you guys a quick review of what I thought about Intergrade, but now we're going to address the elephant in the room, and that's the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Oh boy, I don't even know where to begin. I'm not going to stay all day on this because I'll pretty much elaborate even farther in other videos in the future related to this. Now, I just want to let you guys know I haven't looked at any other YouTubers and their theories and what they think it is. I haven't looked at anything at all. This is I just got finished playing it, and I want to give you my thoughts because I don't want nobody else's impressions to influence my thoughts and what I think about the ending. So we're going to dive right into this because there's a lot to digest and swallow here. Now, if you guys, even before I even talk about this, I know it's going to be a shameless plug, but if you guys are interested in wanting to know my overall thoughts and what I think about Final Fantasy VII's story and the direction that they could possibly go in, and what I think about this, if you want to hear my thoughts on that before diving into this, I suggest you to check it out. I'll leave that in the link in the description below, or I'll put that in the card and you can just click on it and get there. That's one of my highest rated Final Fantasy VII remakes videos here on this channel, and people are currently commenting on it right now because Final Fantasy VII part 2 of the remake is news is coming pretty soon. We hope we getting a trailer pretty soon from Square Enix. We're gonna get a lot of details, so people are finding that video and still commenting on it. So I suggest you check that out. So we're going to dive right into this. Spoiler warning. I'm going to say it once again. Alright. So this one is a doozy here. Alright. So this Intergrade DLC pretty much elaborates or adds even more context to the ending that we have been given in the base Final Fantasy VII Remake game. Now, remember when we last left off, you know, they was alluding that maybe Zack is possibly alive or somewhere. That's what we think. And then, of course, the developers confirmed that Zack is alive, indeed alive. So, when it comes to this DLC, it continues on. You know, Aerith, Barrett, Tifa, Red 13, and Cloud are just left Midgar, and they're walking, they're traveling, and they're trying to pretty much hitch a ride because right now they're on their way to Calm. Calm is a town that's in the original Final Fantasy VII. So we already know, if you play the original Final Fantasy VII, what the next part of the story is going to be leading us to. So, now, the funny thing is, they wound up running into, I believe was his name, Chocobo Sam? One of them, the Chocobo guy that's at the Chocobo stable. You run into him in the original game. Well, this time, instead of you traveling to the Chocobo stable, you wind up running into the Chocobo Sam or the Chocobo guy in general, and you'll hitch a ride, and then he takes you to the crossroads. You know, to the left you have Calm, and then the right, I guess the Chocobo stable maybe to the right or whatever. Now, Aerith had alluded to something. She said something to Cloud in the party that she has this weird feeling in her stomach. To me, in my opinion, I think she feels a disruption within what's going on right about now in this current world that they're in after defeating Fate. She says she feels something. Now Barrett's saying, hey, you must be hungry, let's go get some, just go continue on and let's get something to eat. Now right after that sequence happens, it goes back to Midgar, and it shows a church normally where Aerith, you know, go tend to the flowers and everything. Now as the screen scrolls down, it shows Zack. Now I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh no, oh my God. I said, I'm not going to say nothing. Let's see where this is going to go. You see Zack outside the church talking to himself. He's getting his thoughts together. And as you hear him talk, he's getting words together to get himself to talk and to Aerith. So now this indicates that this dude is in fact alive, like the producer said that he's alive, and that he did survive the onslaught from the Shinra guards. And now that he officially made it to the church, because the whole point of him was trying to, you know, become mercenaries with Cloud and eventually meet up with Aerith. So it looks like he made it. In fact, he's alive, and he's going to talk to Aerith. Now, this is the thing that boggles my mind. He pushes open the church door, and he notices everybody sitting in the church crying, and everybody's devastated. And he gets in there, and he's wondering what the hell just happened. And he says Aerith. He don't know where Aerith is. And then bam, that's it. It's over. So there's a lot to unpack here, because there's a lot of questions that I have. And like I said, check out my previous video, what I think of Final Fantasy VII Remake direction as far as story is concerned. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? Now, you guys who've seen the video already that I've done, you know I don't like this direction that they're going with this. You know, keeping Zack alive, this feels more like fan fiction to me. I don't think it's a great idea at all. I think it's stupid, and I think they're being very reactionary to what they see, what the fan base is talking about. You get this one portion of the fan base that wants to see a good ending for Zack, wants to see a good ending for Aerith, and everything, and that destroys the whole theme of loss when it comes to Final Fantasy. And I think it's really, really stupid. And this thing is, they're walking down dangerous territory with this. So what are my thoughts? What do I think about this ending right here as far as Zack is concerned? Now, this raised a couple of questions. Now, people were saying that maybe this is an alternate timeline, which this is, I don't know what to say about that. But this is what I got from it. He walks into the church. Now, in my opinion, they say Zack is alive. To me, in my opinion, I think the dude's still dead. To me, in my opinion, I think that church symbolizes the afterlife. That's just my opinion. Even though the producer's saying that he's alive, but like I said, they already been lying to us as far as I'm concerned, and they're trying to they're trying to throw a wrench, or they're trying to hit us with a wow factor. They're trying to get us with something here, and I don't know exactly what it is yet. But to me, the church represents the afterlife to me, in my opinion. And him walking into the church is like him walking into the afterlife. And everybody that he sees in the church are people who are victims, who are died from the upper plate crashing down onto Sector 7. And they all died, and is like the church is somewhat like a purgatory or something like that. But I could possibly be wrong. This is just what I'm gathering, because if you notice in the end where he's outside the church, everything has like a bright, like, holy light to it. And then when he opens up the church door, he has the white light in the back of him, kind of similar to Advent Children when Cloud was in the church and he's seen Aerith and he's seen Zack, and then you see Aerith and Zack go back into the church door into the bright white light, and then you see that when he opens up the church door. So to me, it seemed like maybe could this be like a purgatory that he's in? I could possibly be wrong. I don't know. But if he is alive, let's just go with the fact that he is alive, that the producers have said. This raised a lot of questions, for the simple fact is, okay, Zack is alive, and since Zack is alive, where the hell is Cloud? Also, they don't tell you where and at what point in time, and if Zack is in the same timeline, the same space as Cloud and the others are currently in right now. They don't tell you anything. Right now, it's just showing, we don't know if these are separate timelines, we don't know if it's the same timeline, we don't know anything. It's kind of like how, if you've seen the movie Saw pretty much jump into different parts of time. But they did it in a sense to where it seemed like it's all one timeline, that everything is going on at once, when they are in fact different timelines. So we don't know exactly for sure what the hell is going on. But if it is the same timeline, because that's what it looks like, in my opinion, if it is, because the way they showed it, Aerith is not there. If Aerith is not there, that means they have already, because Cloud and them have already left Midgard already. So it would make sense why Aerith isn't there. So it kind of like is alluding that it is the same timeline, but it might possibly not be the same timeline. But let's just say it is the same timeline. Zack is now alive. If Zack is now alive, Cloud should remember that fact that Zack is now alive, since they had destroyed Fate, they tampered with time and everything. Cloud should be aware of Zack being alive in his existence. But what also don't make sense is Zack also has the Buster Sword. Cloud also has the Buster Sword. So if there is somehow in the same timeline, would there be two Clouds? Because where is Cloud? Zack is at the church, but Cloud isn't with him. Where is Cloud? Cloud and Aerith isn't there. Aerith is with Cloud. They're all traveling into Calm. And if Zack is in the same timeline as your party is, then where's his Cloud? And why does he still have the Buster Sword? And if this is dealing with time, wouldn't Cloud have any memory of this new timeline that Zack is alive? You get what I'm trying to say here? So there's a lot of questions to this mystery that just throw a wrench into everything else. And I really don't like this. Now, I'm going to say this. You don't have to agree with me. You really don't have to agree with me, because everybody have their own opinion. There's a portion of the fan base who really like this idea, who really like where this is going. And fine, all power to you. I respect your opinion. I respect the fact that you like this direction. But I'm going to say this. I'm sorry, I don't like it. I really don't like where they're going with this. I remember going to a Maximilian's video related to this. Now, I did look at Maximilian right after I got done, and I didn't look at his reaction. I just wanted to read the comments. And there's a few people, especially this one person in particular, said that, you know, they're kind of glad that they're going in this direction because, you know, being an OG fan, you already know, you know, it's not that, you know, surprising, it's not that shocking anymore because he played the original story over and over again, and it looks like the developers want to recreate that experience of being shocked and everything like that. And this is a perfect way to do that for old fans and newer fans walking into this. And I think that's the stupidest comment I've ever read. That comment is so damn stupid. The reason why Final Fantasy VII, the original, was so great is because the developers weren't going into Final Fantasy VII trying to shock you. They wasn't trying to create a storyline that is meant to, it's like, oh man, this is crazy. This is like blowing my mind. This is just blowing my mind up. No, they just created a story that was interesting to them, and they wanted to share with the community, and the fans took a liking to it, and they love it. To me, it's like in Final Fantasy VII Remake, they going in with the intent to wow the audience. They're going in for shock value. It's like they're going into this Final Fantasy VII to create shock value, and that's the wrong way to go about it. It's not organic. They're going in to try to just warp your expectations, and that's the wrong way to go about story writing and game development when developing, you know, a story for a game. I think when a developer is trying to wow you and trying to create a meta commentary, or they're trying to go in to exceed your expectations by, you know, going with these twists and turns, when they're purposely trying to do it, it never ends well because they're trying to do it instead of just creating a story that just so happened to organically do that to the viewer or the player. And it seems like with Final Fantasy VII Remake that these guys are trying to actually create that type of experience. They're trying to artificially create this experience of, oh wow, like these guys are really, they're really going, you know, they throwing everything at the wall. Like these guys are really trying to warp our expectations with this story and stuff. And I believe this is the wrong idea and the wrong path that they're going, because right now this is no longer a Final Fantasy VII, you know, remake experience to where it is paying homage to the original. This is like a totally different game, in my opinion, and I believe at this point that this game is not even a remake. This is pretty much a sequel to the original game. The way the story is heading and the direction it's going, and like I said at the end, they're saying that an unknown journey awaits. So we don't know what the hell we're walking into. We'll see a familiar setting, set pieces, but just because they're familiar set pieces, it doesn't mean it's going to give us the same narrative. It's not going to have the same context to them, because now everything has changed. Everything has been flipped on its head with this, and the fact is that now that Zack is alive, there's nothing stopping them from making Sephiroth, redeeming him and making him into a hero and giving us a brand new villain. You know what I mean? He already ruined the ending to Final Fantasy VII Remake by giving us the epic boss fight with Sephiroth. So in my belief, I don't even think Sephiroth is going to be the main villain by the time we get to the end of this. It's going to probably be a whole new villain that they're going to create from scratch. That's going to probably introduce us to, and Sephiroth is going to pretty much teaming up with Cloud and everybody else. That's what I believe, in my opinion. But I'll definitely give you my thoughts on that in a separate video, because there's a lot to unpack with this. But I'm almost 40 minutes into this, so I'm going to pretty much wrap this up. I definitely want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade ending, and knowing the fact that Zack is alive, and how much of an impact that this is going to have on the story moving forward? Do you think this is a separate timeline? Do you think this is the same timeline that they're currently in? Definitely want to hear your thoughts. Are you looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2? Like I said, in my opinion, I'm not liking where it's going, but at the same time, I'm curious to see how bad they're going to mess this up. And that's why I want to continue playing, because I want to see how bad they're going to mess this up. But we'll get into that in a separate video. If you want to hear more, definitely hit that like, hit the subscribe button. I really like talking about this, because I really love Final Fantasy VII, the original, and just to see what they're going, where they're going with this, and how they're trying to somehow make this a brand new experience for the new generation and everything is just crazy. But that pretty much wraps the video. I'll be seeing you guys later. This is Mugen Lord signing off. I'll see you Game Fiends later. Peace out.